For my next number, I'd like to return to the
classic. Time.
Live straight classic.
Classic. I'm better than I ever been.
I rock him, the fiend of a microphone.
Yeah, is y'all ready for 2007? It's now another drought. Everybody's a killer. Wow, we bugging out. Since 86, showing the crowd what I'm about. And they still wanna know when the album coming out. Ask the teenagers, OGs, and ask the kids what their definition of classic is. Timeless, so age don't count in the booth. When your flow stays submerged in the fountain of youth. Ain't no doubt in the truth, I'm off the meters. Everybody co-sign it, even non-believers. Since I came in the door, became one of y'all's leaders. In the fresh pair Air Force One sneakers. Uptowns, we call them uppies when they on divas. Probably one with KRS-One teachers. Nas made you look before the heaters. I bet you Khan had them on when he walked with Jesus. Jesus classic. Live straight classic.
Welcome. I'd like to welcome you to the Organization of Black Designers' first of this kind Design Speak event, Just for Kicks. We thank you for joining us and hope this is the first of many such panels. My name is Kier Worthy, unfortunately not in the motion 3D form, but there's representation of me there, a bit of technical difficulty. I am the Executive Director of the Organization of Black Designers. OBD is a nonprofit international professional association dedicated to promoting the visibility, education, empowerment, and interaction of its members, and the understanding and value the diverse design perspectives contribute to world culture and commerce. We appreciate your time and attendance today and hope that you will continue to participate. Some of you join us and become fans and patrons of the organization. Thank you. We are, as things go, never always perfectly planned, but never necessarily perfectly executed. Our moderator, our brand manager, Mr. Sean Robinson, is behind a bit. So he has arrived. He is here. So I throw it over to Jason Robinson, our director of branding here at OBD, and he is going to bring on our esteemed panelist, Mr. Robinson.
Hey, how you guys doing today? Want to thank you all so very much for being here, joining us. It is definitely a pleasure to be with you all today. Again, my name is Josan Robinson, and I am the Director of Branding for the Organization of Black Designers. And definitely want to, again, invite all of you all to stay with us for today's panel. I am actually, as always, running into, as Kier said earlier, a little technical difficulties, but we're getting ready to work this whole thing out. I'm actually coming to you live from the illustrious campus of North Carolina Central University. And with that, I have the distinct pleasure of bringing to you today's virtual discussion, which is Just for Kicks, where we'll be discussing diversity, sustainability, as well as the necessity of Black designers within the global athletic shoe space. So with that, joining us today will be three top Black designers and leaders, both past and present, in the shoe world. And they are E. Scott Morris, who is the Senior Creative Director of Footwear and Design for Anta Sports, formerly with Nike, Under Armour, Reebok, you name it, coming to us live, actually from China.
Yes.
Thank you. How are you doing today?
Doing great. So I'll do it in the classic Chinese style, Ni Hao Ma, which is
hello.
Yeah. And like I said, it's morning. It's 6, almost 6:09, it's almost 6:10.
Oh,
so
wow.
Good to be on the show.
Great. Thank you for being here again. You know, just having you all the way from overseas, your dedication and commitment, just not only to the organization as well as to the genre, just to the art, is something that we really definitely appreciate. And again, coming from China, is already a big deal from us. So thank you again so much, E. Scott. Also, we have with us today Jason Murphy, who is a global design leader and creative director and founder of Freestyle Collab. He has done work, across the board, everywhere from Nike, Under Armour, BET, Black Entertainment Television, as well as Discovery and a few other places. And if I'm not mistaken, Jason, you're coming to us from Atlanta right now, right?
Yep, I'm in the Southwest Atlanta, SWATs.
All right, cool. It's good to see you again, man. I haven't seen you in a while.
Good to see you too, bro.
All right. And we have with us Yuri Mile. I hope I'm saying your last name correctly, who's a senior footwear design manager with Under Armour, and formerly he's done some great work with Puma as well. And he's coming to us more, Baltimore, Maryland.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. How's everyone?
Good, good. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm blessed.
All right, good. So again, I just wanted to welcome you guys and say just how much of a pleasure it is to have you on with us today, and as well as to congratulate you guys for all of the success that you all have had throughout your careers. It's really been inspiring to all of us, myself included, being a creative, being a designer. Myself, I have a relationship with Jason, and I followed E. Scott for a long time and had the pleasure of meeting Yuri now. So you all are definitely a great inspiration to myself as well as all of the future designers. So please know that. And so we're extremely proud of you. And with that, with time in consideration, we're going to jump straight on in. Just questions, like I said, we're going to be talking today about diversity, sustainability, the necessity of Black designers, and maybe even get outside of the athletic shoe game. So just because we touch all of the different fields. So let's begin by going around the table basically and just give us a little bit about how you got started in the industry and how you've been able to create the waves that you have thus far in your career, and also if there's anything special or unique that you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe what you got going on. I guess we can start. Let's go with E. What you got?
Okay. So real quick, been in the industry now. It's been 30 years, right? 30 seasons.
Wow.
If you can imagine that. The impetus, if I can use that word, began at 15 years old. Wow. I asked my mom, I said, Mom, who actually creates the sneakers? Who does that? She said, honey, I don't know. I said, I want to be that guy.
Wow.
I said, I want to be that guy. 15 years old, drawing Nikes, drawing Converse, Adidas, wore everything that was available to wear, from the worst stuff to the best stuff. I took a shot at it. Okay.
Wow. Okay.
I was in the Marine Corps, military. Also went to Michigan State University. As soon as I had the opportunity to get in the footwear game, I did. Reebok was the company who gave me my first shot. So basically, it was the end of 1990. But I didn't get to actually even start designing a shoe until 1991 because I was in combat. So I was gone. Wow. Okay. But when I returned, it was like, okay, all throttles down, let's go. So one thing I can say to you, because I know we want to get with the rest of the panel.
Yeah. The
adventure was the perfect adventure and the perfect storm. I got into this game at the perfect time because anywhere I went, I was one of one or one of two. Right. Wow. Imagine you go to an event in 1991 and you're talking about design. Yeah. The only other person is our esteemed good friend and mentor, Wilson Smith III. He's the only other guy other than me, right? That does what I do. So if you can imagine, it's like, I'm looking at him like, oh my gosh, that's Wilson. You know what I mean? And he's looking like, oh my gosh, that's E. And it's like, we need to connect. And you realize right then, it was like, it is a league unto itself. So for me, OBD was in the making even then.
Wow. Okay. Jason, how about you? How'd you get started making trouble? Yeah, I got to change my words up with Jason. How did you start?
It's good trouble.
Right. What began your troublemaking out here today?
I mean, that could be a long story, man. But the short summary of it is, I've always drawn since I was a little kid, and like your parents are, they're always like, well, what are you going to do with that? And I was heavy into like television. I think, maybe even as a kid, I was heavy into comic books and wanted to be a comic book artist, probably in the beginning.
Wow. Okay.
I think that I always tell people it was an episode of Good Times that changed my life entirely. Like, even though Good Times had some weird dynamics going on within it, the episode where he was able to transform himself from a traditional painter into a commercial artist, for me, was what kind of like really opened up a light bulb for me to say, oh,
wow,
I can essentially prove everybody wrong that you can make a living doing what you love. So,
absolutely.
And then that was my drive the entire time was just to prove everybody wrong.
Okay. It's amazing that you mentioned that because everyone knows, with Good Times, when you start off, you see the
Ernie Barnes painting.
On Ernie Barnes, and a lot of people don't know that I'm actually sitting on his campus right now, which is also my school here in North Carolina Central. He he came out of this university where I'm currently broadcasting from. So I appreciate that, that mention. Yuri, what's going on, man? Up in B-more. I'm originally from DC, and actually live in Baltimore. So, I know them streets. So how you doing up there?
I'm good, man. I'm good.
Good.
Yeah. So, I mean, kind of a similar narrative as far as just getting started, always, having kind of a creative, artistic ability, but not necessarily knowing the options that were available. And so, started off drawing cartoons and looking at comics and kind of duplicating that. But also kind of had a passion for footwear. I think a big part of it was like when I would collect East Bay magazines, I didn't necessarily have all the funds to actually purchase the shoes in them, but I would collect the East Bay magazines and I'd stack them up and I'd circle a little wish list and things that I wanted. And I'd read the little summaries about the product. So I learned about the technologies and didn't fully understand what they meant, but I was learning about it and I always tried to incorporate that. I think I even did like a 5th grade science project on something shoe related. But yeah, so kind of growing up, having this artistic ability, but not knowing how to kind of channel it. And it wasn't until I think I went to like a Finish Line or something like that. And at the time they had like a little publication that to take for free. I read it. I had an interview with a Nike designer and it was talking about one of my favorite shoes. And, from there, I kind of learned about the direction of industrial design and just kind of like the process. And from there, I was just like, okay, like there's people behind these things that create these things. And I would love to get into that. And from there, just kind of wanted to focus what I was doing to kind of go on that kind of that track. So,
okay. And with that, I'm glad you mentioned that. Not only is people behind it that, are responsible for it, but it's people behind it that look like us that's, responsible for it and making it happen. Because, no other community, I think, supports the shoe game as greatly as our community does. And so it's important, which is the reason why we're here. It's important for, all of the sneakerheads and, whole nine to know that, whenever you put that shoe on your foot, it's coming from one of you three. You know what I'm saying? So it's important for them to be able to know that and connect with that, as opposed to just these J's or these Maxes or these whatever they everybody's going out here and getting. So that's important. And I'm also glad that you actually gave a label to with industrial design, product design, the whole nine, because there's a future artist and designer coming up that may not know which track they need to be on to get to where you guys are sitting at. So I definitely appreciate that. And with that, what interest, because I'm listening to you all's story, what interested you all into, were you all previous sneakerheads already, or was it that interest in that creativity, that hunger, that drive, everything basically grew and was developed once you got in?
If I could, one of the things, I think Jason touched on it, and it's the amalgam of everything, meaning the creative amalgam of everything. We're talking about cartoons, we're talking about television, we're talking about sports, we're talking about animation, we're talking about, things we see in our community, things we see in our street, projects we probably did as kids. I'm sure Jason dealt with it, Yuri probably did too, where there was probably something you wanted that did not exist. Wow. I want this thing and it's not there. So I can get some paint, I can get some markers, I can get a couple of items, I can stitch one, I can make one, I can have my own. Yeah. And what happens is the designer, unknown to any of us at that time, is actually alive and well. So what really is happening, and it's happening to kids right now, is just now the scale is bigger. The discovery of the creativity is happening much faster, right? They're realizing I'm creative and I like to make stuff. I like to do stuff. But I think the real hard part is A, getting the support, B, actually getting the materials to say, let me make something. Let me break something. Yeah. Imagine that, right? Well, parents say, oh, that's totally fine. Just break that, right? Now, in some Black families, they'd be like, hey, don't touch that. Right. At the same time, now parents will say, you know what? Try it. If it doesn't work, it's okay. I can get another one, right? Right. And that is the beginning. That's the beginning of it.
Yeah. Okay. Did anyone else want to jump in on that, or?
I think I will. Like to E's point, you know, it is a much larger amalgamation. Like my journey wasn't, you know, cemented in footwear design really at all. Like it was more surrounded by you know, art in general, which led to sort of graphic design.
Okay.
Yeah.
Graphic design, the love of solving problems. Right.
Yes.
Like, that's what I love about footwear design is that it's a part of the same, you know, genre of like, I'm here to solve a problem.
Right.
I love like symmetry, but I'm still trying to understand why I love these things.
Right.
You start to surround yourself with that type of stuff. Like I was reading, you know, books on typography in 7th grade. You know,
you were special.
like, I mean, this stuff was being given to me by, you know, teachers who understood, like, you know, where the nerdy weirdness was.
Right.
We needed to fuel it. 'Cause, you know, as a kid, we were also illegally out doing graffiti and getting arrested or getting chased by the police, you know, hopping the trains and getting on the subway and doing things that we shouldn't have been doing that could have got us in much deeper trouble.
Yeah.
You know, so a lot of like what I also was chasing was the culture at that time that was emerging. And so for me, in that like late 70s, early 80s, that's when hip hop was really starting to emerge.
Yeah.
And so all the stuff was there, all the ingredients was already there. It was more about now you can kind of discover your lane, you know?
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate what you said because I, you know, as a designer myself, like the way I got in, I started off ever since high school studying and practicing in photography. And so that's why anything I do, I'm always image heavy. I'm image first, and then I think about everything else after that. And I remember, and this actually happened to me more than once, being on the job where people look at you and they say, you know, don't worry about, you know, the other, just do the, you play with pictures, but they don't realize what you just said, that it's problem solving. What we do really is problem solving. You know, we have to sit there and we have to listen to you figure out what you want. And a lot of times we have to tell you what you want, which you have no clue. And then we have to make sense of what you're trying to verbalize. We have to then visualize. And that's not easy. So when someone comes and they want a design or something like that in 5 minutes, it's like, okay, I can give you the Mona Lisa or I can give you stick figures. Which one do you want? You know what I mean? So they really don't, you know, have a great deal of appreciation for, you know, what we do. And hopefully I see that trend, you know, sort of changing with the emphasis on, you know, so many, it's not just in advertising agencies or, you know, what have you. You know, you have every company now has a hub within it, you know, dedicated to artwork and designers, because they're realizing that we are definitely problem solvers. Wanted to go into, you know, how do you guys feel and believe, or what do you feel and believe is a contributing factor to why you guys have maintained and remain so relevant and successful over the years, with so many changes and challenges currently going on within the industry? Yuri, how about you? Because I know, you know, out of the group here, you know, you're probably facing more of the today's stuff, because I know, you know, you're coming up, you know, with it now. So how has that affected you?
I mean, I think for me, you know, being the kind of the youngest out of the group in terms of being in the industry, for me, I've kind of maintained kind of like a student kind of mindset, right? So as long as I'm just learning and, you know, being able to kind of be exposed to these guys and have them kind of be able to be mentors in moments and things like that, and just be open to learn the things that they've already been through, has been super helpful for me. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think just kind of and also just being fluid. I think being Black, you it's kind of a skill that you just learn, right? You kind of learn to just kind of be fluid and roll with the punches. And I just think that's kind of an innate ability that we've just been conditioned to kind of do. And it's beneficial, I think. So.
Yes, absolutely.
Excellent.
Okay.
You want me to go? Okay. I think, you know, Yuri touched on two of them right off the top. I thought were good. Number one, I think, is adaptability. You have to be adaptable. Each one of us in our own time has probably experienced it. Part of that success is being able to shift with the times, right? And in that shifting, I think, you have to learn, right? Tools change, and Yuri knows it, and I can guarantee you, Jason knows it. There was a time when there were no computers, okay? There were no computers. You took one of these and you used this to make your way, okay? And I'll tell any designer today, you know what, if you don't sketch, you're doing yourself a disservice because you're letting the tool run you. You're not running the tool, okay?
Waste time, too.
And I think the other thing is, there's a creativity and a fluidity in that creativity that actually comes from the culture. Again, when we talk about where Jason grew up, where Yuri grew up, where I grew up, while they all might be different places, there's one thing in common. It was, you have to figure out how to create something that connects with the people around you, where you are, and it connects to a greater detail. I mean, Jason talked about hip hop. We were all affected. Every single one of us was affected by it. In some way, shape, or form, it began to affect what we did and how we did it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Jason?
I mean, I think he summed it up pretty nicely. Definitely the only thing that I'd probably add is, which was a cornerstone sort of at Nike when he and I were both there, was that ability to be a sponge.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's and to his credit again, like the idea of being adaptable, and being able to shift, on a dime if you need to, or definitely just, sometimes I call it the ability to be a chameleon.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah.
Because honestly, the way, and I don't know how many people are on, but the way that Black people have to live often, very often, is this sort of innate ability to be a chameleon. You know, it's like, I have these glasses on, I look less threatening. I take these glasses off, I look like Mr. T. so that's a different conversation.
No, that's a good point. Somebody said you got, we're probably the only ones who need to be able to wear both red bottoms, Jordans, and Timberlands. You know what I'm saying? We got to run a boardroom as well as the top. And so we have to have that adaptability in order to be successful in all areas of our life, I believe. So absolutely, I like that. I know what my creative process is. When you guys go into what you do, when you're doing your product design, when you're doing your footwear design, Jason, you've been in various different industries, from entertainment, we'll talk about that a little bit more, all the way to the shoe game, to you name it. What is your creative process like? Like, are you drawing from the same place within, or what's that process like inside of you that gets you to where you need to be?
I'm gonna start that one.
Yeah, you start.
I think I draw. This is probably gonna sound corny, but I draw from everything around me. Like I just draw from everything around the universe, especially when it comes to music, like music, fashion, television. Like I'm influenced by a lot of things that people would probably, not even like think that I would be influenced by. I listen to rock and roll. I listen to a lot of jazz. I listen to, some of the weirdest, expressions of music.
Okay.
I'm also like a huge, nerd when it comes to like women's fashion, or like women's shoes, or because I have 2 daughters and a lovely wife, so you kind of have to know how to shop for your women. But I'm definitely a person who likes to experiment. And I like to be involved in things that can challenge me and challenge the way that I think.
Okay.
Like I just look to sort of expose myself to everything.
Okay.
Of how I'm looking to solve a problem. Like, it's definitely identifying what the actual need is, and then my creative process is just sort of surrounded by everything around me.
Okay. Yuri, how about you? What's your creative process? I see your board back there. Is that a part of it there?
Yeah, it is. Don't look too closely down.
Okay.
No, but yeah. So no, it's funny. I think the process for me, I don't know how these guys feel, but for me, it's like an ever evolving thing, right? Like I don't have a set thing that I do because it really depends on what the project is, and what's going on around me. And I'll need different influences maybe or triggers to help get me started depending upon what's happening. But I think generally the simplified process for me is just understanding and thinking first, like what I'm trying to do. I think before I sketch a lot, but I used to sketch like way more. But I think it was to my detriment to a degree because I was like sketching for forms and shapes without necessarily already figuring out in my mind what I want to accomplish. What problem was I actually trying to solve at first, as opposed to trying to just make something that look really cool. And so from learning to kind of do that more, I still sketch, but I don't sketch as much, right? And it's more of a directed kind of like, okay, I figured this out in my head in terms of what I'm trying to accomplish. Now I just need to figure out the best way to kind of do that visually and playing with mock-ups and stuff, but also influenced by any and everything around me. I think I try to line up the things that I want to focus on. I'm very influenced by like film and just like how movies are set up. Yeah, just like, there's like scripts for stuff, right? Like you don't just go shoot stuff. You there's a process for that. You're gonna have your main characters. You're gonna have your plot line and your twists and all that kind of stuff. And I like how there's these parts and it's the same elements. However, you mix them together and you get different outcomes all the time. And so I think that's been a huge influence for me in thinking of like elements of shoes, like characters and who's going to be the main character and who's going to be the supporting. And that's kind of helped me understand what I'm trying to accomplish and do. So yeah. And then as part of the, the overall process, I mean, music is a big part of that too. And just listening to things that are going to like kind of keep me in a certain mood and vibe, and keep me focused. So.
Okay.
I think for myself, again, the fellas hit on it perfectly. For me, it's always, if I can say it this way, at that moment, right? At that moment is as soon as you know what the project is or it's official, you're going to start, or you're creating something on your own at that moment. Right. It's what do you draw on first? What do you see first? What do you go to first? So I think there's a then, I think there's a now, and then there's a next, right? I think those things happen. It's like, what's the thing you draw on from a then, and then a now, and then a next? I think the second thing is, you talk about music, right? And I mean, I can say it, if it's Stevie Wonder, if it's Beethoven, if it's Talib Kweli, okay? Talib done gone on more adventures with me in design than most people, okay? He been there, okay? He rocked with me. We been there, okay? Rakim too. He been there. So those two guys, what I try to do is I turn and try to manifest the sound into the lines, just convert them, right? But I think now as a designer, I write more things down than I do draw things, right? Because a lot of times I need to actually get a dialogue on paper and read it for myself. How do I feel? What am I thinking? And then it's that economy of creativity, right? It's like somebody said to me once, 3 minutes to hunt down something that you're looking for and 3 hours to tear it apart, right? 3 and 3. And then you say, okay, was that enough? Did I learn enough? And then let the process begin. I mean, Jason knows, when I work with Mike Vick, the sketchbooks themselves were all about a continuing dialogue, right? Wow. And I'll tell any designer out there, if you're listening, sketchbooks are good because just like dirt, great things come out of the dirt. They always do. Things grow out of dirt. So don't ever think that dirt is bad. Dirt is good, okay? You need it, okay? It's kind of like you're trying to find these design insights, right? And then you kind of realizing what trends and what truth exists, and you're just compressing everything together. And that's how you begin to get this process. I've done it, like I said, a long time. And people say, dang, dude, you've been doing this for like 30 years. Do you get dry? I'm like, the world keeps changing. So there is no dry.
Yeah.
Keeps changing. There's no dry.
Yeah. I like E's analogy on the sketchbook as well, just because like the way that I use sketching, right? I don't maybe draw as much as I did when I was younger, but the way that I use sketching now is through like clip books, where like I would just be pulling things out of magazines.
Wow. Okay.
I didn't want to throw something away, and I would just create these massive, like he would tell you, like I had these massive mood books, where it was just
Yeah.
like nothing but stuff pulled out of books and glued to the pages,
What I would do to get one
I
right
used to
now.
do that too. Yeah.
or just stuff like
Yep.
you would have like 4 by 8 foot boards at work, and it would just be nothing but images.
Yeah.
Images, all types of images,
Yeah.
like architecture, fashion, artists, painters, like whatever. And we would draw from all of those inspirations, to create and solve the problems for whatever initiatives we were working on at that time.
Okay.
It's always about trying to figure out how to like blend the needs of the business with the needs of the consumer or the athlete, as well as the needs of us as artists.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I had that same book. I would go and just pull stuff out of different magazines, anywhere I could find or get stuff. I remember I had a studio one time, and literally on the walls, I don't think I had any free space because anything from actual clothing samples to like magazine clippings to drawings to anything that I could find, I would take and I would staple and I would put up on the wall, and I would be looking at things that had nothing to do with particularly what I was designing, but I was drawing inspiration from everything that was around me to kind of create something new. I'm in my old studio, but yeah, that I hear that. Now we're here to talk about diversity. So share with us a little bit about what diversity. I mean, I know it's very broad and definitely changes from person to person, but what diversity and inclusion means to you, and why do you feel it's so important in today's fashion and shoe industry? And it's a two-part question, and how it has played a part in your career. That's the first. And then the other thing is, the second question is, what do you feel are some of the most common mistakes in this industry in its thinking about diversity? And what strategies have you basically had to do to respond to that?
Okay. Jay, you want to take it first?
You don't want me to take that first.
No, matter of fact, yeah.
You want to take it first?
Leave him last.
Yeah, I got you.
Let's just say this. Like I have trouble with that whole term, diversity and inclusion.
Okay.
I just do. Because I've been in the industry 26 years, right? And there's never really been diversity. We've been in the industry in certain places, but as far as I'm concerned, there's never been enough in diversity. Like we have diversity probably 4 times as much as we do now, within the 26 years I've been in the business. But even when I started out, like E made a point earlier of always being the one in the room or the one of 2 in the room.
Yeah.
And I've been in spaces early in my career where like I got invited to an event. It was, matter of fact, it was Art Directors Club event. And I got invited to the event. They wrote an entire article on diversity and inclusion and the lack thereof it back in '94. And I was featured in the article. And I'm at the event, and this woman finishes her drink and attempts to pass me her glass as if I was staff.
Wow.
Yeah, that's why I was like, don't get me started. Like, don't get me started. Like, the inclusion part for me is more important at this point, because I think what I see a lot of young designers struggling with is that ability to feel included even when you're there. Like even once you get there, right? That feeling of, support, that feeling of, being able to like be yourself.
Yeah.
That ability to have someone to talk to when you're struggling with a problem or a situation. Like I had to rely on E a lot. I'll be honest with you. There was a lot of stuff that happened in our tenure at Nike that was romper room worthy. Let's just say that.
Okay.
True.
Like furniture convention moving worthy.
Oh, right. let's not air any. Okay.
But you had to have those people, those elders, right, who could actually bring you back down, like help you understand the circumstances that you're walking around in, and just give you a little bit of guidance, just to keep you even keeled.
Yeah.
And even that, right, that's a tough road to carry. For he's been in his career 30 years. I've been in my career 26. And if I was to tell you in my 26 careers, I wish I could have hired even way more designers that I knew had talent.
Okay.
Right.
And someone threw the rope back for me, right? So I credit this man, to the day I die. This dude, Ray Butts. I met him in 2000. Right?
Yeah.
I met Ray at the Organization of Black Designers Conference in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
In 2000. I was working at BET. I was doing motion graphics.
Mhm.
And I gave him, my portfolio. And, it took 5 years. It took 5 years for me to get an interview.
Wow.
And every time I would send him my portfolio, he would never get it for some reason.
Wow.
So he had to literally come to my graduate school, do a talk at my graduate school when I was going to Art Center in Pasadena, and walk my book into HR for me to get an interview.
Wow.
Just like, so when you understand like the kind of, the picking of the locks that we have to do to even just get one person through the door, right?
Mhm.
Even in that tenure, I was only able to bring one other additional person in. I was able to throw the rope back and bring one other person in when I wish I could have brought in 10. And I was able to bring in people to help us work, maybe on the freelance side. But the diversity part is just an uphill battle. To me, it's like pushing a boulder uphill.
Sure.
People who truly do not want more diversity.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say what it is,
Mhm.
I just want them, for me, the inclusion is just about like, accept me for who I am, like, believe that I can actually do the job.
Right.
Because that's why I got hired.
Right.
And let's rock out together and make money. You know what I mean? Let's
Do well.
do that.
Do it. Yeah.
And I think, and I'm hoping I'm not going off on a tangent, but I think I had that attitude because, my first full-time job out of college was at Black Entertainment Television. Everywhere else I had worked, I was kind of like freelance. So I worked for Discovery Channel, but it was freelance, like a 1-year contract. I worked for an advertising agency, Earl Palmer Brown, but it was like freelance. Like, we'll let you in for a little bit,
Right.
Let you in for a little bit. Yeah. Okay. I think we've had enough.
Yeah, that's it.
But then BET, I got brought into BET, and it was one of the best feelings I had ever had in life every day getting up to go to work. Because I was like working with my people, for my people, and actually giving back, jobs to my community.
Yeah.
So that was just, and I mean, I didn't get paid a lot when I first started working there, but the experience of working there was amazing.
Right. Okay. All right.
Hopefully that wasn't too long-winded. But
No. Yuri, how about you?
Yeah. I mean, to kind of tag along with what Jason was saying, I think, the inclusion part is probably the most important. I think as it pertains to like companies and whatnot, like corporate companies and structures, I think this time period has kind of shown that a lot of brands don't necessarily really have the full desire. And I don't necessarily expect them to either. And I think if anything, it's probably given me more of a reason to build like our own. And I think the importance of that, and you see different people in different industries kind of doing that. I as much as I criticize Tyler Perry a lot in certain things, but I think he's an amazing person for what he's done and created his own platform altogether, and just did it himself. And he understands it. And at the end of the day, unless you're controlling it, you kind of can't. How mad can you really be? Like if you're not the one at the top making these decisions. So it's kind of a twofold thing. But ultimately, I think the inclusion part is important. To answer your question, though, in terms of like corporate diversity, I mean, I think just having people that think differently. And different genders and different just coming from different cultures as a whole, and how it's kind of affected me. The current team that I was on prior to just like the shift that I just had, was just an extremely diverse team of people. From gender, our product alignment director was a female. Our head of development was Puerto Rican man. Head of design was me as Black man. I have a designer that's of Chinese descent, and I have a female designer. So it was just like a multicultural group, and it was actually really amazing because I think we all had certain different perspectives, but we were all on the same team and we were able to kind of come together. And I just think that at the end of the day, especially being at a certain brand that might have a certain perception and leans a certain way, and it was really special to be a part of that for the amount of time that it lasted. It's something I'll never forget. And honestly, it directly showed up in the product that we were making because it was fun. We were in unison in it. I mean, honestly, it was like one of the best times or experiences in my short career, though, that like of just like, wow, like I felt like, you know, making product with my friends and people that I like enjoy. And though we have our differences, like we respect our differences, and we are, you know, just out here moving in unison. So that to me was really special. And then the second part of your question was, what are the problems associated with?
Yeah, what are some of the common mistakes that this industry is currently making, or, you know, basically makes, you know, and how have you all had to respond to that? You know, so basically, what are the common mistakes that are currently going on, or have you faced in this industry in regards to the whole D&I?
Well, I'll say this. I think one big thing, and I know you guys have a lot to say too. I think one thing that I'm definitely seeing now is also like, okay, you have this idea of like, okay, we have these diversity and inclusion metrics, and so it's just like numbers and percentages. At the same time, though, like a lot of the problems are more cultural issues, right, of a brand. And so you bringing in more people to a system that isn't necessarily set up to allow them to flourish, to allow them to be themselves and present themselves authentically, doesn't change anything. You know, you're bringing in people, and your attrition rates are still going to be similar because it's a deeper issue than just the amount of people. It's like, well, why are the people leaving to begin with? And looking internally at the culture and trying to really diversify some of the ideas and values in a real way. And that's like a much harder work to do, because you have to really analyze like a lot of things and really look at leadership and look at, you know, the types of people, like, you know, it's a tough thing to do. But I think that's one of the biggest mistakes is people just think, okay, we'll bring in more women, bring in more Black women, bring in more men, whatever it is, you know, Black men. And it's just like, great. But if the overall culture of your brand and company and behaviors aren't, you know, looked at and corrected, it's not going to do much for you at the end of the day.
Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry. Did you want to?
Yeah, I'll make mine really quick. Historically, when you talk about diversity, you always hear race is number one, gender's number two, age is three, but it's a distant third, but it's a very real third, right?
Okay.
I think right now we got to start shifting over to diversity as far as skill sets, knowledge in those skill sets, and the experiences that come from them. Because look at what we're doing right now, right? There are people who they have talent, but they can't even do this. Okay. Yeah. They can't even do this. And so it's like, what skills do you have to get online to talk to people, to help your business grow, right? So I think diversity is going to start coming from, what skills do you have? What can you actually do, right? What knowledge do you have to make it work, right? How can you make business go when you can't be in the same space, right? So that's one. When you talked about those common mistakes, right? The most common mistake, this is what I experienced, and I can't say what the fellas have experienced, but it was, well, he's Black, so he knows, and then you fill in that blank. Okay. Well, he's Black, so he knows basketball. So let him do basketball. Okay. Wow. Jason knows this. Yuri doesn't. I'm a terrible basketball player. Okay. I'm a terrible basketball player. But I'm a great football player and a great football player. The problem is assumption. Assumption ruins things. Okay. But remember, we talked about adaptability. So what I did is I became a student of basketball. And he asked anybody. He can guard somebody, but he ain't shooting no threes. What's not happening? He knows this. Yuri doesn't. He's a terrible basketball player. Okay. A terrible basketball player. Everybody knows that. Right? Now, the other thing is, I think it's really about, in the diversity and in the inclusion, I think it's about being authentic. Yeah. That, to me, is the biggest, most important piece to the puzzle. This is what I mean by that. If you are a Black man who grew up in Baltimore, or you grew up in Atlanta, or you grew up in Chicago, and you can turn all your skills, knowledge, and experiences into something authentic that tells people who've never been there, you can't do this, you can do this. People will accept this, they won't accept this. This is good for business, this is terrible for business. Don't do that. As soon as that authenticity comes in the room and it's viable and they can actually turn it into a tangible thing, the business is going to win, right?
Right.
But in that, Jason will tell you, I can tell you, Yuri can tell you, you have to be professional when you deliver it. You can't say, y'all don't understand, y'all a bunch of knuckleheads. You can't go sideways, right? We actually have to temper the message so that the message actually gets through, right?
Yeah.
Amongst ourselves, we could do it. We could be like, man, you can't do that. But amongst those who are not prepared for that, you have to say, listen, there's a right way and there's a wrong way, and we're giving you the answers to the test. Do it this way, you win. Do it the other way, you lose, right? So for me, it's really about being professional, thinking professional, then acting professional, but really being authentic, because the authenticity is what really gives you the real, what I call diverse tag.
Okay. In your opinion, what makes us so relevant as Black designers as opposed to any other designers, whether it's shoe, fashion, graphic, industrial? I know we sort of touched on it somewhat, but what would you say is that one thing that really gives us that gift, that skill, that talent, that creativity that makes us relevant in the field of art, field of design, especially with you all? Like I said, Jason, I know that been in several different industries. So what has, allowed you to be relevant, and more so, what do you think keeps Black designers relevant?
I mean, I think what definitely keeps me relevant is, always looking at myself as the student, first. I never try to walk into a room like I know everything. Sometimes I often tell people, the first thing I tell people is, I don't know, like, I'm looking to learn. Like, I don't know anything about what's happening here. So help me understand, like, what your needs are. I mean, I think as far as, Black designers, like, being relevant, I think that nobody can tell us what we need for us better than us.
Good point.
Agreed.
I think that's the biggest reason why you have to have us in the room. Because when you don't, that's when, stuff goes wrong. Stories get told wrong, campaigns get designed wrong, messages get received wrong. When you don't have us in the room, wrong decisions get made because you don't have someone to at least ask the question, of, is this the right thing that we need to be doing?
Sure. Agreed.
Okay.
I'll say this. For me, I'm going to give you what I call the super high emotional answer. So my answer is this.
Okay.
We are Black people, right? We are a color, a culture, a consciousness, and a connection to the Creator. Okay. Everybody knows who the Lord and Shepherd of all the world and all the universe is. We are His Black sheep. And if you want to hear this set to music, just go get the Black Sheep album from back in the 90s and listen to the intro, because I just gave you the intro. Okay. I hear that once a week. I swear, I hear it once a week, and it gets me so fired up, because it's like, I don't need to explain that the universe is connected to me. I don't need to tell you I can pull on 10,000 things and choose what I want. I can carry the weight of creativity like a feather and dangle it and laugh and be like, dude, I got 100 more of those where it came from, maybe even 1,000. But I don't need to tell you that, right? And so some people are going to be like, but how and why? You want a logical answer, but it's a spiritual answer. And it's always going to be a spiritual answer, because we ain't made like other people. We ain't like other people. So you know what? When they get frustrated, they get frustrated because, like, how can you tap into the universe and get all that stuff? Because I can't get it. It's like, because you're not connected. It don't work like that. Sorry, I love y'all, but it don't work like that. Okay, that's how it is. So that's my emotional answer for that.
No, I love that, because one thing I think has been proven, whether not anybody wants to believe it or not, is us, our people, our culture is the only that has directly impacted the entire planet. When you think about it,
Pretty much.
When you think about it, this country that we live in sets the tone that pretty much everyone else follows. Well, within this country, in regards to culture or pop culture, as we call it, they follow the trends that we set. So when you connect all those dots, us, our people, our culture, our communities, we set the tone and the trend that the entire planet follows. And we don't really take enough focus and appreciation of that to take advantage of that ourselves. I think a lot of times we don't really value ourselves and understand that ourselves in order to really capitalize off of that.
And it's just, and we just have it by nature. Like it just comes to us by nature, you know.
It's part of who we are.
I just want to add. Can I add something to that?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say I think resilience is one thing that our people kind of have innately, and I think it's that extra thing that we just know how to do. And so though we can have these other skills, I think we're just as talented as everyone else, but I think there's a certain level of resilience to kind of bounce back because it's just innate in us and it's passed down. And also the reason why I think it's important that, you have Black designers. And I want to say this, I do hope one day that we get to a point to where we're not like Black designers and we're just like designers, right? Yeah. Just people who just do well. But for now, Black designers, I think just because historically we've been kept out of the conversation. And I think there's just an importance in having that level of visibility. And, I think our culture hasn't been kept out of the conversation. It's definitely been appropriated in a lot of ways. And you see companies kind of taking, and I think it's very important that the narrative kind of shifts from us being consumers and creators, because I think that's how we're kind of looked at. And so I think the more that we are put in the forefront and we're able to show our capabilities, and show, whether it's our business partners or companies, that we're not only the consumers of these things, but we also can create. And we know not only to just what's best for us too. I think we do, but I think just like we have the ability to just create things that aren't necessarily Black, right? Like we have that ability. We're studied just as much as anyone else. And so I think it's important to kind of switch and change that narrative over time. So I think you need more people in the forefront. And getting more of that visibility so that we can hopefully change the perceptions that people have.
Gotcha. Okay. Now with everything that we've been saying, honestly, do you all feel that you've ever had to alter your creativity or your creative style in order to meet some of these challenges creatively? When it comes to diversity or being seen or being heard or being listened to, because sometimes, and not necessarily you all, but I have heard other designers feel as though they had to sort of sacrifice a few things or, some of their different ideas in order to first get in the door and then make a splash. So do you all feel as though you've ever had to alter your creative style in order to meet, diversity or any type of creative needs, especially within shoe design? That's what, your main focus is right now and where you all are now in shoe design, in order to start a trend or even to impact the culture.
For me, it actually was the opposite. It was the opposite because people weren't expecting me as a young designer to have the impact. They thought, well, he doesn't know. I say, you've never done this before, so you don't know. So you can only do what we tell you. And my thing was, well, that's where you're wrong because of what I've learned on my own and in less than X amount of days or weeks. Now I'm going to present to D Brown and actually show the shoe that hopefully he wants to wear, right? But it has him doing the blind dunk.
Yeah, I'll make sure you let people know who D Brown is. I don't know.
Some people do, some people don't. That's not everybody.
D Brown.
But the whole point was this, just to give everybody a fast update. Originally, another designer was working on it who was not Black. And in that process, that designer wanted to do what they had been doing and thought, we'll just add this and that will be good. I'm like, but you're talking about a signature. So what makes this guy's signature? So right off the top, I didn't even draw it in profile, right? I actually drew it in 3/4 and showed the bottom, like if it was being presented to him on an actual page. The best part about it was the undertone was, well, he can't do that. Why did he do that? But why did Paul Fireman, as the CEO, come to my desk and say, "E. Scott, can I borrow those boards because I need to talk to his agent?" Now, this is the CEO at the time. He comes to my desk. I don't go up to his desk. He comes to my desk. And everybody's like, damn, he came to his desk. And part of me, the whole idea was, now I have something that the leader wants, right? I have something that the guy who's going to sell it, because he was a hell of a salesman. Paul Fireman is one of the best.
Yeah.
He said, do you have those boards? Yeah, sure. Here you go. And he was like, I'll bring them back. I'm thinking, you don't have to bring anything back, dude. You own the company. You don't have to bring nothing back, right? But it was the idea. He knew right then there was an authenticity that he wasn't getting from across his span. And here comes this young guy. And in less than a month, dude figured out how to unlock some things, right?
Okay.
And so to me, it's the opposite. I wasn't trying to adjust to what was happening. I was like, are these your molds? Great. I'm cracking all of them. I'm cracking all of them. But I had to be a professional doing it, though. You can't just walk in and be like, I'm blowing y'all up.
Right.
Yeah. I definitely would agree with E wholeheartedly on that. I think I haven't had that necessarily that experience either in that exact way. I think what I mostly hear from young designers in their frustration of not being heard is that inability to understand how to sell back to their client or their marketing partner or the leadership team that they're attempting to get buy off on. You have to sell it back to them in a way that actually makes it their own.
Okay.
Or gives it back to them in a way that makes them feel like it was kind of their idea. That's maybe that area where you had to like make an adaptation. But I don't think I've had that necessarily experience of feeling like I had to change my design style or change my artistic integrity in order to meet a particular need.
Okay.
At each point, you definitely have to remain professional. I mean, there's definitely work I've done that may have been received in a way or been commented on in a way that I thought was a little inappropriate.
Right.
But again, you just have to then take that feedback in and try to understand where the actual feedback is coming from and what his actual pain point really is, and figure out how to answer that.
Okay.
How to address that need, and usually you can get past that problem.
Yuri, how about you?
Yeah, I definitely agree as well. I think the biggest unlock for me was basically kind of what E. Scott was saying. It's just like being yourself. I think my generation. Well, I don't even want to say that. I just say for me. I say for me. Like I think I came into it seeing the optics of the industry, and there's certain like norms within anything, and certain trends and patterns. And you're like, okay, well, I need to sketch this way, or I need to like render things that way, and I need to do this, do that, and do that. And and I think that to my detriment was me not having my own like voice, really, right? Me trying to emulate other voices and do all these other things. It didn't really pan out well for me, especially like I think it was fine like when I first worked at Puma. I think when I transitioned over to Under Armour, though, it was just a different culture. It's a bit different, and things they look a certain way, and I felt like I had to kind of acquiesce to that. I felt like I needed to kind of do things a very similar way in order to make it work. And it was really a blending of that, but really just being like, okay, I see what this is, and I see what's asked of me, but how can I do that most authentically for me? Okay. And after I made that shift and really was just like, yo, if I realized my biggest fears, like my fears were like, okay, well, I want to do well here and I don't want to get fired or whatever. But I was like, I don't want to, if I was to get fired, like I want to make sure I'm getting fired doing the things that I thought were the right things to do. And they were my own ideas and my own, it was my way.
Right.
As opposed to, still getting let go or something like that. And I didn't ever get the opportunity to really do it the way I would have wanted to do it, or I was listening to other people. And that shift honestly changed the whole thing for me. And just kind of doing it the way that I felt it needed to be done.
Being able to walk away if need be with no regrets.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Okay. Now, as I've mentioned before, I currently, here in Carolina, down in Durham, I'm here in North Carolina Central, in Durham, North Carolina. I'm not quite sure if you all have heard, but actually not far from where I am, down in Winston-Salem. Winston-Salem, North Carolina is actually the very first HBCU to become and Adobe Creative Campus at Winston-Salem State University, which basically means they are incorporating the Adobe Creative Cloud into their curriculum and training, basically to try to close that digital gap. How do you guys feel about that, and how do you feel it may play a part in impacting Black designers and having, in the various industries and actually serving to, be heard and, tackle and address the need of us being at the table, when it comes to design?
I mean, I think that's a great thing that they're doing. I think half the battle is exposure. I think a lot of these young designers and young kids, oftentimes, if you can just be exposed, to the idea of the thing that you may want to do, there's no telling where that journey can take you.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I still attribute it to, that simple shift from Good Times, when, all he did was paint. And I loved Ernie Barnes' paintings.
Yep.
Then when he shifted into like an advertising, executive, when he was doing like what was quoted as commercial art,
right?
He made the shift, and he was able to add tools to his toolbox. So I feel like, Adobe doing this sort of a service just helps young designers and young kids add more tools to that toolbox so that they can actually go and express themselves in ways maybe they, wouldn't have had an opportunity to do so before.
Yeah. You kind of joked about being the younger out of the in the group, but how do you feel that would have served you? Coming up with seeing more colleges, more primarily HBCUs. Actually, become.
So it's funny. I think it would have been amazing because, to be honest, I initially went to HBCU first.
Okay.
I went to Virginia State University, Petersburg, Virginia. Trojans. Yep. And I actually, due to, I'd say, some of the lack of resources that they kind of had and being kind of top, having the backing of such a program like that was going to give them like the newest, platforms and newest technologies and all that kind of stuff, it would have been crucial. And honestly, had it not been for the fact that they didn't have those things, I may have stayed as opposed to transferring a year and a half later. I had to make a really tough decision. It was really tough for me too, because I was really enjoying the whole HBCU experience. I grew up watching, the Cosby Show and particularly A Different World and being like, yo, I want to be at Hillman, and so obviously it's not a real school, but like that experience. And so, and so I got, experiencing that for the year and a half I was there was amazing. And, I wanted to, join a frat and all that stuff. But I had to kind of make this decision of like, all right, well, but where I'm trying to go, I may not be able to do that here simply because they don't have the curriculum or the resources and whatnot. And so I had to make a decision. And I think it would be amazing if back then, they did have this kind of cosign from Adobe and they're having the support and the programs and all that kind of stuff to really ensure that these HBCUs are able to kind of produce the same top talent as these other, top art schools. I think that would be amazing. I think that same kind of shift that's happening that you're seeing in college sports and where you're seeing young African-American athletes kind of take their trajectory in their own hands and like, if we all decide to go to HBCUs as opposed to these other big programs and be exploited, like we can help shift this thing. And I think it would be really great too if you had, if these schools were supported in ways and you had talent, not necessarily feeling like they have to go to these top schools and kind of align themselves to their way of doing things. And, who knows what it would kind of cultivate there. And so I think it's huge. And I think it's a great thing.
To piggyback on that, I know we're talking about design, but even with the sports that since you brought that up, I learned and heard a long time ago. Matter of fact, the head coach here at North Carolina Central, Lavelle Moten, he once said that the people are going to go where the talent is. So a lot of times, we have our kids and our these athletes. They go into this top-notch school because that's where the money is. That's where all of the eyes are focused. That's where they're going to get seen and get an opportunity. Well, if you're good enough, like Shannon Sharp said, who went to Savannah State, you're going to be seen if you're good enough. You know what I mean? And, the people are going to go to where the talent is. I remember, as far as design, You know, I would have loved for, you know, back in the day, I've been doing design, you know, as Jason knows, for 20 some odd years now. And I would have loved to have been at a campus that was a quote unquote creative or Adobe, you know, creative cloud campus. I didn't even realize that this was the path that I was going to be on. I think by the time I realized that, I was maybe a semester out of graduating. And I stumbled upon this because of a project that I had to do where I had to put together a whole creative campaign to go along with an ad campaign that I was putting together for a class I needed in order to graduate. And at that point in time, I realized that I loved this and I fell in love with it, but I had no skills. I had no nothing. So I had to really pick up on all of this once I got out of school. So for the first few years, I was really just trying to figure it out and make a paycheck at the same time. And I was able to go on and do. So I'm hoping that what has started at Winston-Salem State will continue throughout, you know, all of the HBCUs. I really think that there's a lot of kids out there that really, let me not say kids. There's a lot of students out there that want to do this thing called design and don't necessarily particularly know which area to go into, but with that guidance and with it being there, kind of, you know, help them with that, you know, with those steps and getting them closer to where they need to be.
Yeah, I definitely think exposure is everything. I didn't know you went to HBCU.
Yeah,
I went to, because everybody knows I went to Howard.
Yep.
But what's ironic is that my story is the opposite, right? You left for HBCU to go to a school that had better resources, right?
Mm-hmm.
Actually give you the foundation and the education that you really needed. I had to leave an art school for lack of resources of being able to pay for the school.
Howard? Oh.
No, I didn't leave Howard. I left the corporate. So I started at the corporate school of art.
Oh, okay, by NDC. Yep.
Right. And at that time, it was so expensive. You know, Howard was like, and I know I'm probably putting my age out there, but Howard was like $6,000 a term versus like $12,000 a term in the 80s.
I would say it ain't that now.
Right. And so, you know, I was caught in a situation where I wanted to stay in school.
Right.
And I ended up transferring to Howard, and then, you know, using my sort of social resources and my relationships with my friends to like go back and get the syllabuses and the curriculums from that actual school, from the corporate, but just doing all that work at Howard and taking all that work to class at Howard, you know, just, you know, and sort of having this sort of hybrid education, even though I felt like Howard's maybe program at the time wasn't as strong as the corporate. I kind of had to like figure out how to make my way, you know what I mean? In order to like not have to end up leaving school altogether.
Right.
At that particular time, you know.
Okay. And to piggyback on all that, since we're in that lane, what advice would you all give to someone, you know, a student, up and coming designer who has a love for design, and more specifically, a love for shoes? You know, it's the sneakerhead who would love to follow, and especially since, you know, because you spoke to this directly, Yuri, who has a love for kicks and how does this work and what's behind the design and who's behind the shoes and all of that different type of stuff. What advice do you have for them? What they need to study, where they need to go. We talked about the sketchbooks. We talked about knowing exactly which discipline to try to focus on. What advice do you have for the next class of designers?
Yeah, so I get that question a lot. And I get people who, you know, a lot of young kids who are aspiring designers. And to kind of sum it up and simplify, I think it's a couple of things. I think it's mainly, the biggest thing I think is just understanding where the bar is set currently. That's a big thing. So understanding, you know, if you want to get in that space, you know, what are companies even looking at right now? What, you know, going on Behance and looking at people's portfolios and seeing the caliber of work. Like the thing about it now, and you know, I know it's even, you know, for me being in the industry 10 years, I'm sure, you know, whether you're talking about Jason or E. Scott's time, like there was even less resources. But even for me 10 years ago, there was less resources than there are now. And so now you have things like Pencil, you know, Dwayne Edwards doing his thing in Portland, and programs that you can now essentially go and kind of learn all about footwear, learn about apparel, learn about the whole process from development and all that kind of stuff as well. Like the exposure is ridiculous. So, you know, being able to tap and do that research on your own and finding those resources is crucial. And then looking and seeing where the market, you know, where students are who are coming from these schools, and like seeing their work and understanding what's kind of in there, like how they're laying out their portfolios and how they're approaching a project. I think that's like super the first thing I think is just kind of understanding where the bar is set so that you can kind of know where you need to first go. And then looking for those resources online. There's so many pages on Instagram now where you can see like people just posting their work. It's just everywhere. And so I think that's first and foremost. And then I would say, and then after you kind of just get that understanding of that, then I think too, it's just really learning about design as a whole and kind of getting away from specifically like the shoe aspect of it. Because it's all very much informed by design as a whole. And so understanding the design process as a whole and how you can apply it. I think one of the things for me was initially, like before I went to school, I was just so into shoes. I just want to draw shoes. And it's like, you know, my formal education really helped open my eyes to like design as a whole. And understand you're not just drawing things just to draw things. You're not just drawing pretty pictures. You are trying to actually solve problems. And you know, for a lot of us, I think again that making that shift from consumer to you know being a creator, it can be a tough shift because you're so used to just like consuming things, but not necessarily like critically analyzing them. Sorry, and really like using that muscle to like, okay, what is this actually doing and all that stuff. And so you kind of learn that in your studies. And I think that's super important too. So really, again, like knowing what's out there, knowing who's leading in those spaces, and you know, they say emulating, or, you know, when you copy something, it's a form of flattery or whatever. Right. And so understanding what's out there and where the bar is, and then also just really getting your own foundation on design. And I think with that, you start to figure out where you fit into that and what's your perspective. And I mean, that's something I think you can say that to people, like you need to find your own way. I think that comes with time, to be honest, because when you're taking in so much information, sometimes it can be hard to find out your unique voice. And I think that comes through, you know, over some time. But whatever points of uniqueness that you do have that are stand out, like if you have those up front and you have a very different perspective, I'd also say lean into that heavy, because that's at the end of the day, that's what's going to set you apart from other people.
Right. Okay. Jason?
I think for me, I think I would piggyback off of Yuri's answer around understanding the whole, and having like a really, you know, dedicated passion, you know, to the industry and to the, you know, to the craft itself.
Right.
I think the thing that I would also maybe look at, or the analogy that maybe I would give is, I always wanted to play basketball, right? I want to play professional basketball, right? You know, I'm 5'11". I didn't become, you know, 6'2", 6'3". So I chose art as a part of my backup, and it led me on this incredible journey, right? One of which was through the footwear industry. I think that young designers or even young students today, you know, should like let the journey unfold also a little bit. And I would say, you know, think about the other aspects of the footwear industry that you could maybe even work in. You know, like the design aspect is just like one aspect of the footwear industry. You know, there's you know, product development, there's merchandising, there's marketing, there's retail. You know, there's a million ways in which you can sort of get in the league, right, without having to be like the main athlete or the main guy on stage all the time. You can still be, you know, the guy behind the scenes doing a lot of the work that's just as important. Right. And be just as big of a part in the industry, you know. So I would even investigate like these other areas of opportunity within the footwear industry that maybe aren't like brought to the forefront as much as the design aspect sort of is right now. I think, you know, there's a lot of industries right now that are opportunities, you know, for kids to sort of insert themselves into, because they're just as relevant to that aspect of the culture as the design aspect.
Dope. Okay. I called this next section "Fire Off" because basically I have some questions lined up specifically to you guys, and gonna let you know I'm gonna shoot them at you and let you guys just go in. Uh, Trying to think who on. Let's go. All right, let's stay right here with you, Jason. How have you seen the creative, and I know that whole diversity name now, I got to try to stay away from it, but the whole creative and diversity landscape change, as you successfully, mind you, navigated between entertainment, television, footwear, interior, industrial design. You've literally done pretty much almost everything and touched so much. How have you seen the landscape change, in regards to creativity and in regards to diversity? And what do you find was the biggest challenge for you as a creative and as a Black man in navigating those different landscapes?
I think to Yuri's point, the biggest change that I love to see right now is young designers taking the ownership model and the creation model on themselves versus that sort of road that might have been set before where it was like, I got to get a degree so I can go work for this company. I'm seeing a lot of young designers that are like creating their own lanes, from like creating their own verticals. And I credit a lot of that through like the advances of technology, the advances in culture and hip hop, and even the influences of certain artists within hip hop, right? If you even like mentioning Jay-Z might be a little facetious, but like if you think about a Nipsey Hussle, right. His like entirely own vertical. I think a lot of these young kids are seeing that, and they're seeing the avenues and opportunities for which they can change their lives themselves.
Okay.
To Yuri's point, though, sometimes what is missing is that follow-up of your education, or like that foundation of design as a whole. And so what I would encourage a lot of young designers to do, who are actually really making moves, like tremendous moves, their own, is that just continue to be a student and really focus on your craft and follow up on like the industry of design as a whole. Like one person I really love in the design world right now is Theaster Gates.
Oh, okay.
And mainly because he was an urban planner, architect, and also a sort of fine artist, right? Who's doing some like outstanding things in Chicago, and I think that's an incredible like man, if you would ever like sort of look him up and study some of the work that he's doing and the work that he's done.
Okay.
And it seems like it's the same sort of pattern of just zigzag,
Okay.
Like really, like I don't see the challenges of like new diversity right now. I just see that kids can maybe reach out to OGs in this game for like bits of advice, not instruction. I don't like to tell people what to do. I like to give some guidance on like how to avoid certain type of pothole in the industry. But
it's really all you can really do.
Yeah, but the main thing I would say is I love what I'm seeing with these young designers really pushing boundaries and really like taking on that idea of ownership of their IP, of their art, of like their own brands themselves, because they are, I think a lot of these like established brands of today are going to start to see some decline within the next 5 to 10 years.
Really? Okay.
I mean, Instagram and the internet is undefeated.
Yeah. Trust me, the internet is undefeated.
There's so many brands that I support right now because I found out about them just on Instagram.
Right.
Like Public Rec, like they are a young growing brand that is probably at some point within the next 5 years potentially could eclipse Lululemon.
Really? Wow. Yeah. Okay. I'm learning something new. Okay.
But again, to piggyback on Yuri's point, like let's focus on like the industries of which we could actually create and own. Like there's another company on IG that I often see called Cometic. I think focus on like men's and women's like swimwear. I was like, man, that's fantastic. Like let's go. Like let's own these industries of which we could actually participate in and support one another in. Right, so that we don't have to go and buy a Lululemon if we don't want to. We can go buy, whatever brand basics that the next, great designer wants to invent.
Okay.
At that same price point, right? Because this stuff is not rocket science no more. Like the barrier of entry is shortened through like the advances of technology.
Okay. Yuri, you've spoken and said that you believe celebrating, and of course, I got to do my homework on you guys. But you spoke and said that you believe celebrating Black history is crucial, especially in this industry. You went on to say the contributions that we've made in the culture, as far as design and fashion, and especially sports, is undeniable. But now it's really about reclaiming the narrative, if I'm quoting you correctly, and taking ownership over our contribution. And I really felt that. I thought it was really profound for someone to say. Explain to us how you stay true to that sentiment as a creative, and as you continue to do your work, and how that drives what you do.
Yeah, I think for me that's kind of been more of a recent discovery. Just like I'm kind of in that turning point now where I'm trying to really align myself with my values and the things that I really care about. And I think telling stories of whether it be, I guess, underprivileged communities or like Black communities, there's so many stories that haven't been told. And I think that having a little bit of an ability to do that, like with Under Armour and some of our AMP packs that we were doing, like we just did a Black History Month pack, and it was kind of inspired by David Ajayi, the architect for the African American Smithsonian Museum. Yep. And so, but it was cool though. And I mean, I'm sure a lot of people didn't even really know that might have been the main inspiration for it, but like just being able to kind of tell those stories through a bigger, mainstream vessel was interesting. And so I think, and kind of like what Jason was saying, like kind of reclaiming the narrative in a sense of like, we don't necessarily need these big brands to do it anymore, right? Like they haven't been historically doing a great job at telling our stories authentically anyway. And they've probably been more so profiting off of our culture. And I think it's time for us to be able to tell our stories in a more authentic way, because I think we are going to be able to do that better because we just understand it. There's just certain nuances that we just get. We just know it. And I think, it's important that we kind of take control of that. It's important. And so also too, so in terms of that, like starting our own businesses and things like that. And then also too, if we do decide to stay in those lanes and these bigger organizations, I think it's just important that our voices, we continuously make sure they're heard, and we advocate for programs and projects that are going to be able to also kind of tell those stories and kind of benefit communities and things like that. So I think it's like a 360 approach for me. It's just kind of learning, like, how can I show up and be my authentic self more, no matter what it is I'm doing, whether I'm working for some big brand or if I'm doing my own thing. Like, how can I align it to what actually matters to me, as opposed to minimizing or, dumbing myself down or whatever. For the sake of someone else. So.
Okay. I see we got E online with us. What's going on, bro?
Kids are on the way to school. We accomplished our mission.
Trust me, everybody tuning in, just again, know and believe that we are truly thankful and appreciative to have this brother. Again, he's coming to us from China, people. Right now, it is early in the morning for him, and before a designer, he's a dad. So,
right.
and I really, we thank you, bro, for being with us. Thank you. Welcome back. I got these guys. I told them during the fire off session where I got some specific questions. I stayed up all night digging up dirt on you guys. So, but no, seriously, I'm just saying. But I got some specific questions for you guys. So actually, I'm a bring it on over to you because I had a chance to speak to them a little bit. So, with you joining us, I wanted to ask you, Scott, in regards to the necessity of Black designers.
Yes.
Right. In the past, you created signature products, and you mentioned some of them as we've been talking, for athletes such as Shaquille O'Neal, Emmitt Smith, LaDainian Tomlinson. The list goes on and on. And you've actually helped grow Nike's cleated business, right? Yeah. From like 58 mil to almost over 100 million.
Yeah.
Within 108 mil, something within 6 years, which is amazing. Along with Unique, he's doing work for University of Oregon, their mascot and everything like that. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yep. That's
Okay.
right.
Now, what was your inspiration behind all of that? Because as I'm even saying it, I read it this was the first time I'm looking at it. Even as I sit here and recite these accomplishments now, my mind's still blown. What was the inspiration behind those projects, and how did your background influence or play a role in your creativity? Especially being a Black designer, and being able to step in and do those different things and take a company like Nike, from there to here, and put your hands on those athletes. Because in order to do that, and I don't mean to belabor it, but in order to do that also comes a great level of faith and trust in someone in order to do those things. So what all went into that?
Okay, well, first I'm going to say this. Yuri touched on it, and it was, I already knew I was Black, but why can't I just be the designer? Why can't I just be that? And so that was the mentality I was taking. Like, I'm the professional. I'm going to be the designer. That's who I'm going to be, right? Okay. Everybody knows I was Black. They could see that. I could see that. But I wasn't worried about that. What I was worried about was the opportunity. Wow. When we talk about the mascot, and I'll be brief on this. Mm-hmm. So if you're familiar with The Lion King on Broadway, right?
Yep. Sure.
The gentleman who actually did all of that work, his name is Michael Curry. His studios are in Scappoose, Oregon. When I tell you his staff and his team, they are amazing people. They are amazing creative talents in their own rights, and I have to give them their props. He was coming to present an idea to Nike to do a alternative mascot, because Nike pays a royalty to Walt Disney for Donald Duck. They actually have to pay for that, right? And they were wondering, should they continue to pay or should they create something new? So I happened to be in the room. Now, this is what you call, the moment of the guerrilla tactics that we use as designers, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm in the room. So I'm like, you know what? The information is privy to me and nobody's kicking me out. So I included myself. I crashed that party, okay? Mm-hmm. And while that was being shared, I'm looking at what he's presenting, which is a muscular duck in overalls with a flat top driving a pickup truck. I'm looking at Tinker like, is that what you really want? Because Tinker is the person who's in charge of the project. He's like, I'm like, is that what you really want? And he was like, well, no. I said, what do you want? He goes, I don't know. I said, can I take a shot? He said, yeah, sure. So literally at the end of that day, from 5 to 8, I drew the mascot, which basically was Spider-Man, Batman, Battle of the Planets, all in a big blender with green and gold with a big giant O. I said, this is what I'm going to do. And so, no, that's exactly what happened. I came back to him the next day, presented it. He said, I love it. Let's go take it to Phil. Went to Phil Knight. Phil was like, this is cool. How much is it going to cost me, E? And I had already sat down and talked to all the people. I ran around at lunchtime asking people, hey, can you help me make this? Can you help me mold this? Can you get me the Swift suit? Can you get me Nike Air Rift to make me a high cut? Yeah, we could do that. And it was all about those relationships. So I was cashing in on all those relationships at that moment. And when he said, how much is it going to cost me in-house? I said, total time, total cost, it's going to take us about 22 hours, $14,000 in or out. He goes, E, I'm in. Don't screw it up. It's okay. So Tinker looks at me like, okay, dude, you're on. And if you can imagine, it really was, again, it's what Jason experienced and I did too at Nike. The relationships you build are everything, because the people, once I told them what we were trying to do, they were like, I get to be a part of this. It wasn't me like, well, you're going to do this for me and you're going to, no, it was like, we're in this, right? We naturally, as designers, particularly Black designers, we have a natural inclusion gene where it's in us already. We instantly reach out. And because I did that at that moment, that actually benefited the project. Switch that around to, we finished the project, the egg came out at halftime, the guy popped out of it with the suit on. He was super athletic, super cool. And I got to tell you, I heard people in the stands go, oh, that's amazing. And I heard people go, oh, that's freaking terrible, right? And I started laughing. I thought it was great. Right. My friend sitting next to me, he did the head model of the duck, the helmet. And he goes, man, did you hear the terrible part? I said, dude, you don't understand. I'm like, to have that level of polar opposites means you did something right. Because
Yeah.
it's either instantly emotionally loved or instantly viscerally emotionally disliked. I'm like, so that's good. That's what you want,
good.
right?
Mhm.
Right. In that same sense, the cleated thing was about. It wasn't so much about cleats versus on street basketball sneakers.
Okay.
It was about the players were not being initiated into the process. They were not being, they was like, do you like these? How about these? I'm like, no, ask them what they're doing. What has changed? Did they get injured? How are they playing? What's different these days? So myself, my good friend Aaron Miller, and Jay Murph knows Aaron really well. Again, classic case of, while he's not a black guy in his spirit, 100% brother. He knows what to do. He knows how to go with you. He's like, come on, man, let's go get it. So we would go out and we would do what we needed to do. Talk to players, ask questions, make questionnaires, put stuff down, ask hard questions. We got told by our counterpart, well, why would you want to do cleated? It's not like it's a growth category. And I started laughing. I said, you know what? That's what you think. I said, watch. Sure enough, we grew, we doubled and then some. But you know what the best part was? And Jason knows because he was a part of it. As soon as we would get to that point, we had players in the Super Bowl, guys getting ready to participate. Jason is a part of making, graphics, lookbooks, stuff for iPods and this and that. Meanwhile, I'm on the other side. I'm trying to make cleats, special custom colors just for guys to play the big game, right? Yeah. Highlight for me, talking to Hines Ward when they went to the Super Bowl and they played Seattle and they won, right? Mm-hmm. It was interesting. The month before, he kept saying, I'm tired. I need some extra in my cleats. And what it was is he couldn't dig in because he had screw-ins in the heel. So we came up with a concept called the Talon, built it into his plate. He wore it when Antoine Randall L. threw him that ball in the fourth quarter, and he caught that ball for a touchdown, and he's on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Yeah. I'm sitting at the 50-yard line in the upper deck in Detroit watching it happen going, and he wasn't tired. It actually worked out. Wow. For me, it was we did our job. We just did our job. That's what we did. Right? It just so happens I got to be a part of all these amazing things. But do not get it confused. And I say this to every designer out there. There are a cast of characters that you will be working with when you get to these great moments. Don't forget them. Don't be like the people you don't want to be like. Right. Say thank you. Go up and say, and this person helped me, and that person helped me. Because that means something. So there you go.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. That's amazing story. Thank you for sharing that. A lot of tidbits. I wish I could have time to write stuff down because I'm have to mentally take notes of everything that you guys are saying. Let me go back over here to Jason. Oh boy, here's one.
Why does this cat always give me the smoke, yo?
You man. I love you. On many occasions, you've spoken about diversity, and I remember looking at an interview that you did a while back on Project and Exec. You remember with Chris Burns, and it stated that you capture, again, I'm quoting, you capture the reality of a professional in an industry who has to take on the responsibility of speaking out. Mm-hmm. And it goes on to mention, how about the anger and frustration and the fear in using your platform to lay out the inequities within the industry and how awkward that moment of being the only Black person in the room. And then, of course, you went on to make a statement on how diversity has come down to mean essentially how diversity has come to mean white women and not much else. Talk to us a little bit about that, and how you.
Okay. I think I remember that conversation. And to be honest, I mean, he did paraphrase a lot of what I said. I didn't just say white women. Sure. I think what I said was diversity no longer meant Black people. Okay. Because it meant every other demographic other than Black people, right? So what I started, when I meant to say in that shift was, I saw diversity meaning women, and a lot of that meant white women, but also Asian minorities, LGBTQ started to become like the meaning, right, of diversity. And so then what would happen is, issues that surrounded African Americans or Black people in general within these corporate systems start to fall by the wayside, right? It's just, we started to get less and less attention on the things that like we needed to be resolved.
Okay.
Right. And I think that that's where a lot of my frustration started to lie, is that I still was at work on a regular basis dealing with all kinds of microaggressions
Wow. Yeah.
that weren't being addressed by anyone except myself. So, and then by that time, you know, you're working in a corporate sort of a system where, you know, you don't necessarily, these are things you can really go to your, you know, boss about, just have a one-on-one conversation. You need your people to have a chat with, you know what I mean, to kind of help you understand like a method by which you can navigate this. And so I think that's more along the lines of what I was trying to express to him, is that diversity, the importance of diversity was now not set on it being about Black people in diversity.
Okay.
We were sort of like marginalized even more in the corporate system by uplifting everyone else and saying, hey, look at what we're doing.
Right.
You know, look at all the diversity that we have. Right. Meanwhile, the needs of Black and brown folks were still being marginalized, even to a larger detriment. What I meant.
Well, I'm definitely glad we had a chance to talk about that even more, and expound on that. Yuri, how important is a diverse workforce to you? You know, specifically, and how in your eyes does it impact and drive your creativity? Is it something that you found to be needed? And I guess first and foremost, you know, explain, you know, you feel a diverse workforce is, and important, or how does that impact your creativity and speaking to your target audience?
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of addressed that a little earlier in terms of, you know, when I was talking about how the team that I've been with more recently has been a really pleasurable experience in terms of just the diversity of whether it be age, whether it be race, whether it be gender. Having a good mix of all of that has just been really good, because I think it encompasses a lot. When you think about, you know, if you think about culture, what, you know, I think that's a very, I don't know, overused term, but if you talk about like sneaker culture or Black culture, again, you know, it's not just Black people participating in these things, right? And so these things have kind of been taken by a lot of different people, and so it's you know, though I think the crux of it might, you know, be Black, I think there's other elements and other sub you know, genres that kind of play a part into it. And so to have people that kind of have experience in those different things and kind of can approach things all differently, to kind of create products that are able to appeal to different people, because they're, well, those different considerations and nuances are thought of ahead of time. I think it's super crucial, and I think it's always going to make the best product. I mean, whenever you have people that are more monolithic, or, you know, just kind of all think the same, it's going to show. And it might be great for the people they're creating it for, but it's not going to go past that. It's not going to be able to branch past that. And I think, you know, most brands are not trying to do that on purpose anyway. I think they're always looking for things to kind of appeal to a broader group. But I think sometimes they're not understanding, especially the shifts that have happened more recently, maybe in the last like 5 years, 10 years, of how people consume things and who's exposed to what. It's only gotten more and more broad. And so I think sometimes people have very antiquated equations of how they think they should apply a certain procedure to get this outcome, not understanding that the consumer has evolved and changed and the marketplace has changed. So I think it's super important to have people that internally reflect the things that you're trying to, you know, put out and get, because it's just people, the consumer, I think is way more intelligent than a lot of times. I always hear like, oh, they're not that smart, but I think they are. You know, I you know, I'm a consumer as well. And so it's like, I do know when you're full of, you know, when you're not being authentic. I can tell. It's very clear that you don't understand something. So you know, but I think there's like this older idea that, oh, the consumer doesn't know and we have to tell them what they want and all that kind of stuff. And to a degree, I do think, like, sure, you do want to, your job should be looking at all the intersections and the insights that maybe someone else isn't, to be able to find a solution that maybe they didn't have. But to think that they are naive enough to not know that you don't know what you're doing is foolish to me.
Right.
So it's important to have people that understand these things at all levels, whether it be marketing, whether it be in the actual product itself, whether it be even in development, like just it's and every facet. It's just important to have people that are in the know. So
Well said.
Thank you.
One thing, and this is, for a broad group discussion, one thing that I've realized and found just within myself, and I found it with other creators as well, is never just creative in what we do, as designers. We always, just because we're artistic, we're creative, we come up with so many different and come from so many different inspirations. You can have someone doing industrial design, but they also are photographers. They may also write. They may also be in the theater. They may also do so many different things. Because I know when I sit down, like I said, I've done photography, I've done graphic design, I've been involved in the theater district. I've been a bunch of different things, film and television, you name it. What are some of the other passions that each of you all have in addition to what you currently are doing? In addition to what that title, that job title is.
Wow. Jason?
Oh man, I am getting into urban planning, which sounds crazy.
What does it?
No, for me it does. It's like dealing with like a whole like different set of like circumstances, individuals, people, like politics. And these are areas where like I'm definitely, at least right now, like I'm not as versed. You know what I mean? Because what it is I can see the problems in certain like neighborhoods that need to be addressed, and I can see blight in the Black community, and part of me wants to figure out how to fix it and like how to address it. Because I want my neighborhood just as beautiful as another person's neighborhood. And so it's been interesting to sort of like start delving into those spaces. I think that I've also been in real estate also, just because it helps me create passive income.
Okay.
So I spend a lot of time now in Home Depot.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. And I mean, everything else is still along those same lines in the design world. As long as it's design related, I'm into it.
Okay.
I've been doing a little bit of upcycling of furniture, so I've been doing some like mid-century modern upcycling of furniture as well as fashion. So I've been doing that as well. Still doing the consulting, even though COVID has kind of hit me in the head this year. I'll chalk it up to 2020.
Yeah.
But I am still enjoying like those other sort of creative pursuits. Yeah. And I will say the big thing that I'm really starting to stick my head into is the urban planning piece.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I'm gonna work around my screen here. So, Yuri, how about you? In addition to holding it down, where you are, what else do you have going on? Your outlets,
Yeah, so one of my things that I've been doing, so like I said, initially when I was at HBCU, I initially was majoring in graphic design. So graphic design has been like a passion of mine. And I think how that kind of manifests itself, it's helpful, obviously, in the things I'm doing in terms of with Under Armour or just footwear design, but also too a lot of like branding, logo stuff. One of the things I've been doing for the past few years is trying to help out people of color who are like starting new businesses and need branding. I think it's super important. I think there's a lot to be said about someone's logo and the level of professionalism that your branding kind of has. And so for me, it's kind of been an area where I always kind of wanted to do that. And I do it like, yeah, it's not something I do for everyone, but I'll do it for certain people that I really believe in, and generally Black people that I think are just like need that push, right? And they need, they've got a great idea, because I know how hard it is to kind of like have the courage to start your own thing. And so I always want to help feed into that as much as possible and kind of help it. So generally I don't even really charge for that. And so it's just like, I'll do that. And that's like, I don't want to call that philanthropic work, but that's just something that I do for me that makes me feel good and I'm helping other people. So I say like graphic design stuff. Another thing I love photography. That's just something I've always kind of dabbled with too.
Yeah.
And then
what do you shoot
more?
with?
So I have a Nikon D500. Yeah.
Okay.
And so no, 5100. And yeah. And so yeah, I've had it for a long time, but it's just something I just love to kind of do in my spare time. I wanna start shooting film. And I have not yet done that yet. I'm a little, that's very daunting to me because it's like you don't know if it turned out until you see it at the end of the day. But I've got some friends that are trying to kind of convince me to go in that route. And then lastly, kind of a new hobby for me is learning a lot about like the stock market and like financial literacy. I think, my career thus far has allowed me to do some amazing things like pay off student debt and things like that. And that's super important for me. And so, right. So, how do I, going back to like reclaiming the narrative and how do we build like this like legacy and how do we build generational wealth and things like that?
Right.
I don't want my only avenue of that to just be like, okay, I think I'm gonna work for some company and I'm gonna just like build something for my, for the generations behind me. So there's things that I need to do and kind of be aware about on my own and learning to invest and things like that. And also, apparel, getting into apparel and doing some things in that space and trying to build things that are bigger than myself and not necessarily aligned to like someone else's brand or things like that. So that's kind of where my creative endeavors have been focused.
Okay. All right, you're up.
Well, I'll say this: those extracurricular things. It's been a chase for a very long time. So to start, Yuri once again, he always gives an amazing insight. And I will say this to everybody out there who's been listening and participating. Think about the generational wealth part. Think about the investment part. Think about when you're making good money. Don't just burn it up on stuff. Think about what are you going to do or what are you going to leave for your children? What are you going to prepare so that when you're finished, they can take the baton you left and they have something to work with. I think that's super important. Really, really important. One of the things you asked, Josan, was what are the other extracurricular things that I'm into? Joking, but I'm not even jokingly. I want to do this. I want to work with somebody to figure out how to stop forest fires. I think I got the chops for it. Okay. I know you say, huh? When it's funny, Jason talked about urban planning, and it's like, by no stretch am I a firefighter, but what I am is a designer, and I have a few ideas, and I need to get to somebody to start asking questions, right?
Okay.
Because again, land is land, and we can't let it get destroyed because we need it, right? So there's that. I'm definitely interested in what I call the whole user experience concept. I've not taken a dive into it, but I'm in observation mode.
And when you say the user experience, you mean like the UI UX, or you mean
exactly, in a sense of you see a lot of apps and things that have been created for people to experience and enjoy, right? Whether it's be for service or for personal use. I have about 2 or 3 thoughts that I think, if I can use this, and I'll share with our team here and everybody out there. Think about the business we have all been a part of, the footwear and apparel industry, right? And if you ask any sneaker collector, what is your end game? They can't tell you. Because it's like, is your goal to have a room full of shoes that you don't sell and you just sit on that will, thanks to entropy, they will eventually fall apart? Or are you going to sell them all down to the last one and say, and I took the funds from this and I invested it over here and I built something else, right? I don't know what anybody's end game is, but I have a thought about what the end game is, right? Which I'll tell Jason and Muri another time away from this. But I'm not gonna talk about that here. Okay, we'll talk about that away from me. Okay, but I think there's an end game because I've played enough to know, and like Doctor Strange did in Avengers.
Yeah,
just hold up the finger. This is it. This is that one. I'm gonna go after it, right? I think the second thing for me is my wife says it, and many good friends, they say, E, when are you going to become a professor? When are you going to be a teacher? When are you going to get in the classroom
Yeah.
and get in there and mess it up, right? Because that's what everybody says I'm good at is the teaching part and the sharing part. And so I definitely want to pursue that. I have some thoughts about how I'd like to do it. And I'm not even opposed to so much what part of the country as much as it is a good experience. That's the most important thing, to give kids great experience for design. I definitely am checking out what I call metaphysical studies. Jason knows, you know, I've been biblically scholar reading the whole bit, but I think there's even more that we don't understand. So I'm looking at that too. My wife does as well. So we check that out. And then, you know, there's what I call the next generation of footwear. So, I mean, there's an African running company called INDA, if you're not familiar with them. INDA, ENDA. And for anybody out there, jump online, check out INDA. They're doing some really good stuff right now. And I would love to, at some point, connect with them and other African-based footwear and apparel companies, because I sincerely believe now it's the knowledge I've acquired. I need to pass that knowledge across, give it to them, and not pay, give it to them, right? And say, how can I help you create what you have as a dream? So those are a handful of things that are on my wish list.
Okay. All right. Well, gentlemen, I actually just looked up, and I think we are coming to a close. I wasn't even I got so wrapped up in everything that we were talking about and doing that time truly started to slip by. I can't believe we've been here as long as we have. So as we bring this on in and bring this to a close, again, I want to thank you guys so much for being here with us. It's a Sunday for some of us. It's a Sunday, I guess Monday, for E.
It's Monday.
It's Monday with E is, bringing this all together and bringing this to a close. I'm going to open up the floor briefly, let you guys to say, any final parting words, before, and I also want to make sure that I, give a huge shout out to I call them my B team, playing in the background, making this all happen and all possible. Before I salute, those beautiful ladies behind the scenes making this happen, I definitely want to
great job
being on with us tonight, and
definitely,
absolutely. Victoria, thank you guys so much. You all heard from Tia Worthy a little earlier. But before we get into shooting this whole thing down and get kicked off this live chat, any final words that you want to leave the future designers?
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
To run, not a sprint. Okay.
It's a marathon, not a sprint. Yep. And let the journey unfold. Don't be afraid to let the journey unfold. Just be courageous.
Right.
Yep.
Be focused, but definitely be courageous.
Okay.
I'll take the baton on that one. I'll let Yuri be the closer because he's got that closing thing going. I'll let him be the closer. I'm gonna be the middleman. I definitely think it's be a professional. Be a professional. It's okay for you to be upset. It's okay for you to call things out. But whatever you do, young people, young designers, wherever you are in whatever profession, be the professional. Okay? You can kick and scream and call them whatever you want at home.
Right.
But in front of them, be the professional, because remember this, they're only going to remember what you said. Okay? That's number one.
Amen.
Number two, you know what? If you're young in your career, go ahead and take a few risks, take a few gambles, okay? It's worth it. And I'll tell you why. Because if you can do something that hasn't been done that way, guess what they're going to be looking at? They're going to be looking at you and saying, how did you come up with that? You need to build your stories and your lore now, because you're a brand unto yourself. So you might as well go ahead and take your shots, okay? Jason's done it. I've done it. Yuri's done it. And there's no reason why you can't either. Probably the third thing is have some fun too. Have fun and be a nice person. Don't be a jerk. Nobody likes a jerk. It doesn't mean not be stern when something's not right or call things out the way they should be. But just don't be a jerk about it. Okay? Just don't. Because nobody wants to work with the jerk. Okay?
Right.
Oh, and one last thing. your creativity is your creativity. No one gets to control what the creator gave you. Okay. No one create you. I'm gonna say it again. Nobody controls what he gave you. If you don't like it, you say this was given to me by him, so I can take my thing and leave. Okay. You don't let anybody just beat your creativity up, and don't let them talk down to it either, because they don't even understand what it's like to have it. This is a very special thing. All right, I'm done. Yuri, close them out.
Yuri, close them out.
Man, that was really great. I guess my thing would just be, because you guys covered a lot of it. I think it's really just appreciate the process and the journey, and not just like the destination. I think that's super, super crucial. I think a lot of times our generation is very much about trying to get somewhere really quickly, and where they want to be. And I think sometimes they forget to just experience and appreciate the process and all the trials that come along with it. And I think, when you kind of know what your purpose is, or you're aligned with it and you're working towards it, it'll lead you to your destination, but just don't forget to, kind of appreciate the process as a whole.
Yep.
So,
okay. Well said.
Since this is OBD, for the audience, tell us really quickly about the significance of OBD to you guys, and what role that it has played, in your world and in the design world, and influenced you in any way.
I mean, I'll start that. I definitely want to give a shout out to David Rice, like the founder of this organization. And I met him in the early 90s. So this organization has been a pivotal part of my career from my inception of graduating, in 94. I met a lot of like OGs that were in the design game that kind of took me under their wing and just guided me into the various sort of stages and parts of my journey. So this organization means a lot to me, and I definitely want to credit him for that. So that's the biggest thing I want to say is just shout out to him. And shout out to Kier also and the rest of this team for continuing to carry the flag as we see it now.
Same thing. I'm going to mirror that completely. David Rice had an insight many years ago, I think, about creating literally a league, right? An organization that would pull our most creative people together to really talk and discuss, share ideas, and quite possibly work together.
Right.
And throughout time, to be a part of it, to see it and watch it grow. And again, to see Kier take this baton. And as we're sitting here electronically doing this, it reminds me that, we've come a long way, but we still got a very long way to go.
Yeah, shout out to Kier. He came up with this brainchild, and when he approached me with it, I was like, he'll tell you, I said, I think I probably harassed him a little bit too much because he brought something good to me. I said, look, you got to do this now. I was almost every day. Who we got? Just, let me know. So, definitely, shout out here. Yuri,
yeah, I mean, for me to keep it in 100, this is kind of new. I got really introduced to this organization very recently. But just in the short period of time, I think what it represents, and we're having conversations like this, and we're kind of bridging these different gaps in terms of levels of experience and things like that. And I think it's really great because for me, it's always been important to make sure that I'm learning from the people who have been there and done that and can give you that insight. And I think it's very important that no matter what age you are, being able to kind of reach back and have someone that can give you some insight and just can put you up on game. So I'm super thankful for that. Super thankful for Kier, and he's him and I, we had a good conversation a few days ago, and that man knows his music, and so he's put me on to a lot of great music recently too. So shout out to him for that.
All right. Now, really quickly, you have a shoe coming up, right? You have an upcoming a shoe launch or something, Yuri?
Yeah, I do. It's a shoe that's dropping on the 1st. It's called the Hover Summit Fat Tire. I've been posting about it a lot on my Instagram, doing my own promo. just trying to get, raise a little awareness. So
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
A little awareness. Okay.
Dude, this ain't no shame in it.
Sure. All right.
All I know is I need that 12 and a half, my man.
Hey, thing, like, listen, I got your info. I'm gonna be sending my sizes over. Please.
All right.
I need that 12 and a half ASAP.
Right.
Let's go. Listen, brothers. I really appreciate you guys again. I definitely want to thank, I call them my V team, Benita, Victoria, you guys back there,
Yes.
they're backstage,
Great job.
making it
Appreciate
happen.
you.
I truly, truly appreciate you all for making this happen, because believe me, they work tirelessly and put stuff that probably was more important to the side to make this happen for us. So I want to thank you ladies truly. What we have here this evening. Thank you guys. And again, to Kier, bro, you came up with a great idea. I don't know if you can slide in if you're still around, but if so, thank you again for what you've been doing and what you're currently doing with OBD. Like E. Scott said, you're taking the reins and pushing forward. And major shout out to David Rice. He, putting this together and creating this platform for us to all come together, all designers and artists from various disciplines, to be able to speak and grow from one another and find one another, not just be out floating around without the support that we need. So to David, to Kier, to everyone, again, back again to you guys. Thank you guys so much for being here from stateside to China. This is a special evening. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you guys.
Appreciate it. Man, Eagle, good to see you, man. God,
man, it's good to see you too, brother. Like I said, I'm out there, so you can find me. If you need to get me this way, you can. And here's the thing: remember, if anybody out there, if you're trying to hunt me down, I'm not some overly private person. You can contact me. Okay, I'm 12 hours ahead of New York. I am 15 hours ahead of Los Angeles. So just know, if you call me at your 8 p.m., it's 8 a.m. for me. Okay, if you're in New York. So if you know that, you can still get me. My number's still the same. Nothing changed.
Real quick before we shut it, and Benita does her thing now. Everybody shout out your handles. Your social, how people can follow you and stay in touch with you guys and know what you guys got going on.
Okay. I'm just at Jason Hussein Murphy on IG, and just JasonHusseinMurphy.com, and then the other website is just freestylecollab.com.
Okay. For myself, it's pretty simple. If you go on Instagram, it's designer_ESM. You can find that pretty easy. As far as email, and even on LinkedIn, if you got to go there, it's literally E. Scott Morris. For if you need to send me an email or something, it's just simply escottmorris@icloud.com. Just as simple.
So, all right.
And for me, it's my name for Instagram. It's kind of spelled phonetically, so it's YUR_REE__MILE. So that's my handle on Instagram. So
you gotta check out that page. It's hot. Trust me.
Good to see you too, Yuri.
Yeah, man. And super proud of you, bro.
I'll catch you next time I'm in Baltimore, so we can.
Yeah, bro. Last time you just caught me. It was my birthday weekend where I was in Philly. I was like, oh my gosh. But yeah, I'll be here. So.
We could go get those Coco's crab cakes in a few weeks.
Yes.
There it is.
All right.
There we go. All right. Eat some for me.